Well, we'll wait for that because I'm actually juggling like two other things.
Okay.
So that's okay. So we're just going to wait for 2 more minutes and then I'll do the introduction and the overview of the meeting. And we have some really cool special things to, I always find it really, there, you can actually have an attitude of being um, open-hearted and surprised and providing feedback that makes a difference for families and communities. Or you can be a compliance monitor who can't really view multiple perspectives. And I'll just say that the consolidated plan and SN revisions are coming up as well as accountability revisions. And so the stakeholders and the people who really are influenced by those decisions, you should make your voices known. It's very important for the requirement for stakeholder feedback to mitigate any unforeseen implications or consequences based on what the state educational agency decides as a policy. So it's very important that you end up focusing on those issues, especially related to recent COVID experiences, uh, where if you look at the percentages in the accountability system, we might want to change it so there's a thoughtful approach to um, weighting the annual growth so that we focus on growth instead of proficiency when we see kind of the impact of what's happened with schools during COVID, as well as the emotional trauma that kids are suffering. Uh, so I'm gonna start, and I'll give you the that's kind of an introduction, and I'll give you an overview of what we're going to do today. I'm going to be monitoring all the questions in the chat for Megan, and Megan has graciously said that when she does her presentation, then I'll look at all the questions, and instead of people unmuting and asking the question, if you put all your questions in the chat, and then I'll make sure that I provide them for Megan. And Megan is very open to being, having questions inserted into her presentation that seems immediately relevant for everybody. Okay. And the other thing is, if we can't get responses to your questions, because we don't want to be dogmatic, uh, we'll always end up saying, we'll get back to you with that for more clarification based on your context. Okay, so we want to make sure that we're exemplifying what responsiveness looks like. Uh, so I'll be monitoring the chat for questions for Megan. And then I'm only going to do one refugee bill that is now law. It was actually signed into law. And unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but I was on a visit to a high school. And so I couldn't really attend the signing. But Stephanie, and it's Young, isn't it, Bev? Her last name is Young, Stephanie Young.
Hunt, I believe, Stephanie Hunt.
Hunt, yeah. So Stephanie Hunt, who was this amazing teacher she was at Clayton, and she organized this amazing approach to mentoring refugee students. Um, and they also had Spanish for native speakers and some really interesting, innovative work. And so then she ended up going to West, and so she works in kind of the ELD program. And last week, when the bill was being signed into law, I was visiting, and one of the things that we notice is the way in which schools create a culture of welcoming for refugee students, especially when they've been traumatized recently, like the Afghan refugees and now the Ukrainian refugees, right? So, this whole attitude about the Utah way, which is open to refugees and welcoming them, is what these two specific bills are now laws. And Bev was great because she was there often, either speaking or up on the Hill, and working on this bill for 2 years. Many of us were doing this. And I must say, and Bev, you can chime in, but the fact that we went to and it's both of the bills are by Dan Johnson, Representative Johnson, and Thatcher in the Senate. So I'm saying these names because it's important for us to understand how we can reach out to people based on what's actually happening in our schools and not expect other people to do it. And so Dan Johnson is amazing, and so is Thatcher, and there are other legislators who are working to benefit refugees and ensure that Utah stays open to refugee families and communities in their educational experiences. So the thing that was impressive is that at the House committee meeting, it passed unanimously. The Senate passed unanimously, and I think I think there was only maybe
One.
one. There was one dissenting vote in the entire um, legislature. And when you think about that, and when you think about when I review what the bill says, um, I think, from my viewpoint, next time I'll do the one on, and I'll have people who are working with language and interpretation services. It'll be a more collaborative one because this happened previously for Ogden, and I think it's made a significant difference for the way in which the next bill was passed around family engagement and language services, because that is a civil rights obligation. If parents matter, then communicating with them in a language they understand is really important. Uh, and also a language they understand, but if their families, if their students are actually English speakers and they're multilingual, then we shouldn't be so narrow-minded as to make assumptions when at registration and enrollment. And that's what ends up being the bill that I'm going to review with you. Um, so, one last thing, which I think is really impressive. And I'm going to say which high school it was. So yesterday, when I was at Highland High School, the principal made an announcement, and the announcement was, among all the other announcements, was that they've designated a specific room across from a bathroom where students can do the cleansing ritual for prayer. He actually announced, don't forget that room so and so, 105 or whatever it is. And I visited there. I was talking with the multilingual learner advocates and the freshman success program people. That at lunchtime the room will be open for prayer, and the prayer rugs are kept there. And so they turn off the lights, we all leave, and it only takes 10 minutes. And when Brian Quisenberry, who's our Assistant Attorney General, and I, when we looked at the constitutional and case law, it's really important that we realize every single student has a constitutional right uh, to have a space for prayer. It doesn't matter what religion, it could be Christian or Judaism, anything like that. And so, not allowing students, a space or just 10 minutes for prayer, because when we did a focus group with the Islamic Institute of Salt Lake, this came up as an issue. So we can't really have teachers giving permission for kids to go to the bathroom unquestioned for 20 minutes and then not allow a student, to pray. So if you need any more support on that, you just email me. And it would be, so this is one example from a high school in Salt Lake, but it would be really great if you start having this conversation so that students of the Muslim faith actually have a logical place to pray. Okay, so we're gonna start, and we're actually gonna start with Beverly reading a statement. Well, Bev, why don't you introduce it, because this is going to frame the entire meeting that we have in relationship to being responsive to refugee families, parents, and communities.
And I'm going to really try hard to make it all the way through. Are you getting feedback, or is it just me?
No, you're fine.
Okay. Okay, I am recovering from COVID, made it 2 whole years, and this week it got me. So, I'm going to try really hard to make it through without coughing. But I was fortunate enough to be able to work with Olivia Whiteley and Senator Johnson and help review this bill. I mean, it's been a 2-year process, House Bill 230, and went and was able to provide testimony, but it didn't matter what I said. There was a young man who really, the bill was, the impetus for some of these changes was for this young man. And last week when we went to the signing with the governor, Representative Johnson actually gave this young man the copy signed by the governor with the pen and everything so that he could keep it. So his name, and I apologize, I'm going to look off screen here for a minute, but his name is Hussein Assad, and he is a refugee from Darfur, Sudan. And I'm just going to read it verbatim. There are a few inconsistencies, right, with this teenage student. I arrived in Utah in August 12th, 2016. As I continue my studies, I will be attending Utah State University next year, and I'm going to be studying international relations. National relations is important, I think, because I would not be a refugee if it wasn't for uneducated diplomats in my country, and I would like to help the country move forward peacefully. I am asking you to support House Bill 230, Refugee and Immigrant Student Policies Amendments. When I came to the beautiful state of Utah in August 2016, I was supposed to be enrolled in school by September 2nd. But I had to wait until February 12th to start school because of a birthday translation error that occurred in Chad at the refugee camp. The translators at refugee camp speak French and we speak Arabic. And there was confusion, not just for my family, but many families. I was supposed to be enrolled in 7th grade, but because of the birth date error, I was enrolled as a sophomore in high school. It's because when you arrive in the United States, you don't have your birth certificate with you. They automatically enroll you as January 1. I'm assuming the person there, gave all of us birthday of January 1, and the years were changed. We had our school documents that we studied in the UN school and told him at grade 6, but they would not listen to my mother or the school documents or the UN documents. Unless you bring a birth certificate, you have to wait until it gets done. And I'm going to, just because I was there hearing him, so I'm not going to read this next part verbatim. We had to wait until someone in Sudan could go and find the documents. My dad dug a hole and hid all of our documents before he was killed, and we fled to the refugee camp. The situation impacted my family, my mom, who didn't speak any English, who wanted to go to school, wanted her children to go to school and at least know some words or read or write so she can pass her citizenship test, that they told her in the interview in the refugee camp. She also was seeing all of our friends at the apartment complex go to school every morning, come back riding their scooters and going after school at U City to do fun activities. But we just could see from the yard. This affected our family deeply. We had no choice but to stay home or go to different grades that we were not supposed to be in. In the end, my mom made a decision. She just said, it's okay. Just everybody go to any class they put you in until we can get this figured out. Going to school, being in a different class until they proved it, and being taken out of that class to be put in a lower class was just too much. So those are Yassine's words. And maybe, Christelle, I'll share the experience I had on Friday after you review the bill.
The reason we're framing it this way is this whole kind of reputation that Utah has about welcoming refugees. There are a lot of systemic issues that mitigate against that happening. And so this bill and the intention is to make sure that we don't add increased trauma. I just heard recently, which is again really unfortunate, is that there are some districts that will not, they don't really, in some way, which is ironic, they're not really trusting the family's experiences. And so as a consequence, if they don't have the I-94 form at registration, they won't enroll the student. So that's actually a huge civil rights violation, not to mention that Afghan refugees don't have that because they were evacuated when Kabul fell to the Taliban. So they're coming in with really different documents. And I'll actually have in the next session, we had a whole session on the issues related to the Afghan refugees and how that shouldn't mitigate enrollment appropriately. And now the same thing is happening with Ukrainian refugees. You know, if you're being bombed and you're running away and you're going to another country and the International Rescue Committee is there in Poland to help you, you know, you're not going to have documents. So I'm saying this in the strongest possible way is that enrolling students is a civil right. And so the bill addresses this, and the fact that the state legislature unanimously, except for one vote, passed it is now law. We don't have choice. This is not a choice. Okay, and so the way in which you would train registrars and people in, you know, the front office, Robin at Murray and I have had this conversation about how families are greeted at the front office during enrollment. Okay, not okay to be not welcoming and inclusive, just not okay. So, and I'm not saying this as a judgment as much as the rights in the Constitution related to equitable access as well as civil rights case law. So we don't want, Utah does not want to be in a position where the Office of Civil Rights, you know, does a huge Department of Justice violation for all the schools in Utah. We don't, you know, we can mitigate that by thinking more strategically. So that's all I'm going to say about that, and then we're going to move to Megan. Megan will share the screen, and actually I'm going to, and this is Victoria Soleil that I talked to yesterday at Highland. Yassine is a senior, and I've worked with him at his high school the past 4 years. He's had to miss a lot of school because he had to go to immigration office to fix his birth date issue. It has affected him even to this year, and he is amazing. Hasn't Yassine become a citizen, Victoria?
He's been working on that still. So this year he's trying to get his citizenship.
Okay, so this is another, I'm going to say one more thing about this. When I work with refugee students and we do resumes, they actually list all the languages that they speak. So I'm working with one student. He's not a refugee, but he actually is from South India. He's literate in 10 languages. So students that I work with that are refugees, when they go through job applications, their resumes, you know, when it says putting language that I speak and understand, they should list all their languages, right? Because for the economic development of Utah, employers are going to say, well, this is an advantage because this increased the opportunity for families with different languages to be our clients, right? So just think more strategically about how you can use languages as assets in relationship to the future economic development of families in Utah. And, you know, Wasatch has done they have a great program of parent engagement in every single school. You know, Ogden and Murray, the way they use translation services have transformed the way in which families are engaged. So, you know, let's be, you know, the state that is a state that's on the cutting edge for creating, you know, economic opportunities for all families. Okay, so Megan, do you want to, and I'm going to monitor the questions in the chat. And Megan, do you want to share your screen with us? Thanks, Megan. Do you want to start? I think you're muted.
Yep.
Great.
Yeah. Okay. Can you all see my screen okay and hear me okay? Awesome. Seeing lots of thumbs up. Thank you. And I'm going to apologize right now. My computer, of course, is doing the threatening to update and restart. So fingers crossed that if I disappear, we all know why. They seem to like to do that first thing in the morning, right? But again, Megan Lopez here from the assessment department to give you Wida updates, and then actually just based on some information that we got yesterday, a little bit of just overall Utah summative updates that definitely are going to impact our multilingual learners in Utah. So, and Christelle, just keeping an eye on the chat, and she will just interrupt, you know me, interrupt me at any time, happy to answer questions. And of course, if it's not the right time for that question, or if it's pertaining to your LEA only, you know, send me an email anytime and I will respond as soon as I can. So let's go over some Wida updates first. All right, so just a couple of logistic things. Now that the bulk of testing is done among the entire consortium in the United States, customer service hours for Wida have gone back to their normal hours, but of course DRC customer service always stays the same. I always will say, I know a lot of you reach out to me, but DRC and Wida, their customer service is excellent. I would always encourage you to reach out to them first and foremost, especially if it has anything to do with any kind of assessment, technology related concerns, or online secure portal trainings, platform questions. So just take note of those updated customer service hours. And then where are we as far as access testing? First, a huge thank you to all of you that allowed us to have a really successful test administration this year, even with the hiccups that we encountered with some technology issues due to DRC's servers kind of having a couple of issues, and then also experiencing a lot of soft closures during our Omicron surge. So we did extend the testing window. Hopefully that helped. The good news is that none of our reporting was delayed. So something to take note of though was that the deadline for shipping was quite some time ago. If you had any missing materials, I have contacted your LEA to let you know that some secure materials were still missing and that those need to be returned. Please do know if you have anything that is being returned that needs to be scored. On this screen, you will see those reporting windows for those different times that those materials would be received. Otherwise, the bulk of actually, I can say all materials that were received on time, all tests that were received on time have all been scored. We did just close out our data validation that was completed by the LEAs, by you all in your LEAs and your assessment directors. Please do note if you see any discrepancies come through as you start to receive your reports next Friday, please let Melissa Preziosi, she is our data specialist in our assessment and accountability department. Please let her know of those discrepancies. And please also just remember, anytime you email her with any information, only student state ID numbers, no names or anything like that. So we can ensure the privacy and not share any PPI. So, Christelle?
Yeah, so I just want to say the reason this is really critical in relationship to the validation and the way in which it's reported to the districts and to the LEAs is that these are related to programming issues at the high school. So if you have counselors who will not provide equitable access to advanced coursework because they have a Wida score, this is a serious problem that happens over and over and over and over again. And again, I'll just say it's a huge civil rights violation to not have equitable access to career and college coursework based on something like a Wida score. And based on the analysis that we've done, by the time kids are in 4th and 5th grade, when content is more, kind of heavy in relationship to subject areas, teachers habitually in the pattern tend to talk more at students and not really give them the opportunity to practice academic language in the content areas. So this happens, and then when kids get to middle school, they end up being scheduled into remedial classes, and then they're not motivated in any way. Why would they be? And their scores in Wida tend to drop. And then when they transition to high school, and those supports aren't provided at the high school level, Park City does an amazing job of that if you ever want to visit. What ends up happening is, their WIDA scores, they're stuck at level 3 and 4, and then, the opportunity gap increases for multilingual learners. So this is a really serious issue. And so as soon as you get the results, they should go to the schools with the caveat that counselors and families have the right to come in and challenge the way in which they're programmed for next year. It's very important.
And so with that, to kind of piggyback on what Christelle was just saying, again, any discrepancies, please let Melissa Preziosi know. So we at the state, because we have our data validation that's going to be taking place in May, to catch anything that might have fallen through the cracks during your validation. So you're going to get your reports next Friday. And so just like Christelle was saying, it is so important that you share those results. So our testing ethics policy says you do need to share those reports with all stakeholders within 3 weeks of receipt. So please make sure that you are getting that to parents, guardians, students, educators, especially counselors. Another thing that we have been getting asked a lot is who updates the SIS once you get those reports. We at the state have zero access to your SIS. You are responsible for updating your SIS, even if it's Aspire, the state's one. You still run it all. We don't get to touch that. The only way we have access to your SIS is through UTREX, and that is only to get data from, not make any changes. So it's really important that you update your SIS, especially because you are right now, you're building out your boards, your schedule boards for next year, you're registering students, and this data, along with all the other pieces of data to create a full student profile, need to be considered when creating schedules for next year. So please make sure you update your SIS. And then do note that if you do need the printed copies, those will be arriving on the 16th as well. So again, if you have any concerns, Melissa Preziosi is going to be your gal. And you can, if you're like, I don't remember who that is, and I can put her after this, I'll put her email in the chat, but you can email me and I'll make sure she gets it. And again, just SSID numbers, please. All right. And as you are receiving those scores, just a couple of resources and supports for interpreting those score reports to help you in what you're seeing as you get those reports. Please remember, it's not enough to just look at the overall composite when making instructional decisions. You really got to do a data dive. We need to look at those separate composites, the oral composite, the literacy composites, also the comprehension, also each individual domain. So yes, that overall composite does determine eligibility for services and whether or not they're going to be redesignated to a monitoring status. Right now, still, you've probably heard a lot of talking about accountability redesign and stuff like that. It is still 5.0 overall composite. We will let you know if and when that does change. But make sure you're, again, updating the status of your students. And when it comes to interpreting those scores, please look deeper. Please go into it deeper.
Okay, so we have a question. One is, how are reports sent? And the second one is about, can you put those links in the chat? But I think we're not going to do that until the end, and Megan can put it in the chat after the presentation. So Megan, can you do that?
Yes, I would be happy to. So your scores are going to be available in Wida AMS. And I believe, I feel like I sent an email out already. I actually, no, I know I did. On Tuesday, I sent an email out with a copy of this PowerPoint where all the links are embedded, so you can access it there. Also in AD memos, I've sent all these links out as well. If you need help concerning how to access things in AMS, those reports, you can contact DRC, or you can contact myself, or you can look in the AMS user guide and I'll walk you through how to download those reports. You can download them in a lot of different ways. Very conveniently though, also in a CSV file for mass download.
Megan, the reason I guess I'm asking is for my school, UCA, we've had a lot of changes and people running it. I don't know if I'm on your email. I don't know if I've received that information, those emails that you're talking about. I
Right.
do have access to the webpage to get them once they're posted, now that you speak about that. So I do understand that, but I'm wondering if I can be added just so that I can get stuff in the future.
Absolutely.
And maybe you could forward that.
Yeah, so absolutely. I'll say the best way to get added onto those listservs, because we send out weekly assessment directors memos through email, and anyone can receive those if they request it. And so what you'll want to do is email me, and then we can add you to our list, and that'll go to your assessment directors. And we have a lot of ALS directors receive those as well, because they want these updates. We know many of you wear a plethora of hats. So if you want that, just send me an email and I can have our assistant, Emily Ng, add you to our listserv so you can start receiving those on a weekly basis.
So I'm also going to say something in relationship to establishing your own account in DRC so you can access those reports. And that's also a very immediate way to get it. And Megan can assist you with that just in an email to me, and I can send it out to everybody with the steps to how to do that. The other thing is, while the 5.0 is still the exit, you should be very, very clear when you look at the way in which expressive language, which is speaking and reading, are connected to comprehension, and receptive language, and then expressive language in speaking. So I'm looking at the observation tool. So it's really this idea of listening for an explicit purpose and reading for an explicit purpose. So the receptive language skills that connect to comprehension. And I'm building on what Megan said in relationship to the design of instruction. If you just have a composite score and you have no idea what that means, and you're working with teachers in PLCs, why would you think that they would have the capacity to actually adjust their instruction if they don't really understand like what the domains are saying? And then same thing with expressive language skills, speaking with an explicit prompt and writing to an explicit prompt. Generally, when you get to high school, writing ends up being very low, speaking and writing ends up being very low. And so you have to actually think about the way in which receptive language and comprehension shape the ability for teachers to understand how teaching academic language and then using that to write to a prompt is so critical. So, and if you need extra help with that, I'm always available. We have modules on it for all the ESL endorsement courses. Megan and their assessment team, Wida already does, extensive professional development that we have access to.
Mhm.
So you have all these opportunities to continue to be a learning community that benefits students, right? So we're just encouraging you to really be focused on this in relationship to mitigating, the 2 years of COVID and the consequences of that.
Right, right. And I just to clarify one thing that Christelle said, if you have questions about your WIDA AMS accounts, please, you can reach out to Christelle. She can forward things to me, or you can contact me directly. If you need district level access, I do need to set that up for you. So do contact us if you do not have district level access, because I do need to create that. And then again, to piggyback off of what Christelle said, if you have ever any questions, or you're like, I just need someone to walk me through a report, these resources you have up on the screen, Megan, they're just not enough. I don't learn that way. I need someone like to walk me through it. Just contact me, contact Christelle. We are happy to walk you through it. I do a lot of just quick trainings on, hey, this is what the report is, this is what they're saying, but also what are other pieces of data that need to be considered to tell the full story, so we can make, it's not going to be perfect, but the most informed decisions moving forward for our multilingual learner students. All right, so now this might be a little more appropriate for your tech people or your assessment directors, but in case you're that person, when you do get access to these reports, so the different types of layouts that you can get and everything, this will kind of be a guide on those CSV files and the data layouts that you can get and how you can utilize those and tweak those to your needs. So again, more techy, but if you are that person that has to deal with this is another great resource. All right, I am definitely not going to read this to you, but again, I sent this out to you so you can see it. This year, we did see, unfortunately, a very large uptick in plagiarism happening with our WIDA access test. So I just really quickly wanted to take a minute to talk to you about what USBE's response was and just some requests that we have of LEAs moving forward. So essentially what was shared by DRC in investigating this a little further is they said, they obviously can't confirm this, but it seems like there were definitely issues with how TAs were monitoring the access test sessions, in particular, the writing and the speaking domains. And they said it's very obvious that some kind of unapproved device had to have been used to access websites to plagiarize the written or spoken responses. I will say in some cases, students literally had Google reading their response in the recordings, in their speaking recordings. So, it is happening. A couple of things that we have discussed is that, technology, things are very, very savvy. Students are getting savvy and technology is really smooth these days. We've noticed a lot of smartwatches in tests. We've been going out and doing just test observations this spring for summative tests. I was doing some observations yesterday and we counted 16 smartwatches right there during the test yesterday. So it's real. We also noticed that a lot of students use their own wireless earbuds or AirPods for testing as well. We don't know what those are hooked to. So we do suggest that it be an LEA approved headset with microphones that they're using, and make sure that the students don't have smart devices, phones. We've even had students say, well, I put my phone in my bag and put my bag on the side of the room, but then I kept another phone in my pocket. Like they're getting tricky, but here's another thing. We know that a lot of our students, especially our multilingual students, use assistive technology, and we allow that. So it's really important to understand that while we allow it in classrooms for learning purposes and accommodations for learning, it is not an appropriate accommodation for the access test, and to really have those open conversations with the students to allow them to know, because in some cases students might think, and in investigating a lot of this, students did say, well, I use my phone to translate stuff all the time in class. I didn't know that that was wrong on the test. So really allowing students to understand what is the purpose of this test, and why can we not use that, right? Those assistive technologies on the test. So having some really just open, crucial conversations with our students. So LEAs have received some letters that actually came from Kim Rathke, our testing coordinator, just saying, you know, here's our response. USBE has decided to only invalidate the plagiarized items, not the entire domain. But it's important that the student understand, because that one item or items that were plagiarized do rescore an invalid test score. It will skew their score and not accurately show what they are truly capable of in their proficiency level. So letting them know, like, that these are kind of the consequences, having those conversations. But again, we are really going to try to do the best we can to make sure that we're communicating this to LEAs for next year's testing. I have also already put in requests with Wida. They're discussing it now to really make sure that our scripts really highlight the expectations of test security, what can and cannot be used, but also what's the purpose of this test, and allowing the students to know the reason why devices shouldn't be used. So we are trying to help LEAs in mitigating any kind of plagiarism. And again, if you have any questions about this or need thought partners and how we can help support you, let us know. Do know everything has been scored, so we will not be receiving any, you will not be receiving any other plagiarism alerts, okay?
So we have a question. The question is, have ADs already been notified of any issues?
Yes. Any instance of plagiarism found in the state of Utah, all ADs have been notified. There will be no more for the rest of this spring. And I just lost my train of thought, but yeah, everyone has been notified.
Thanks, Megan.
Yeah. A couple of things that are on the screen. When you guys get a chance, go ahead and read it. Just ensuring that all teachers know what's in the test administration manual, what are some best practices for testing. And again, we'll be happy to work through any of this with you. Now that access testing is over, that doesn't mean screening's over by any means. So just a couple of reminders that even if I mean, not even if, we know y'all are still getting new students registering, which is awesome. As you get new students, home language surveys are being completed. Make sure that you are still screening students within those 10 school days. And remember that everything is available in either AMS or the secure portal. All kindergarten screener stuff is available all the time in the secure portal. If you need any paper screeners, please just contact me. We have them readily available for anyone that needs those. And again, that magic number for eligibility for language services is still that 5.0. So if they're 5.0 or over composite, they are not eligible for services in the state of Utah. If it's a 4.9 or lower, they are eligible for services. Please do note also, we are in the second semester of the school year. So when you screen your kindergarten students that are coming in, you will need to be doing, you will need to do all 4 domains right now. And of course, update your SIS as soon as you get those scores. All right, this is something, again, more of your techie folks, unless you are that person that wears that tech hat. There are the new supported system requirements. So as all the devices update their systems, so does Wida. So the new system requirements for access and screener are posted in AMS. So just make sure that your tech coordinators have access to AMS, and as a district person that has access to AMS, you can create those tech accounts for the appropriate people in your LEA. If you have any questions, contact DRC or contact myself to create those accounts. Now, some exciting stuff. Speaking of AMS and technical stuff, this will affect you. AMS is going to get kind of a little overhaul coming really soon. You're going to start to see those changes take place next month. And hopefully it makes AMS more user-friendly. So there is going to be some enhancements on the landing page. And this is something that I love. You're going to be able to monitor testing it through AMS to see where everyone is at. So if you want to know, there's going to be a webinar on May 17th from 12 to 1. And that link on this page is the link to the Zoom for that webinar. This will walk you through, Wida's going to walk you through and host this webinar. It'll walk you through all the different enhancements that you are going to see in AMS. My hope is that it's going to make AMS a little more user-friendly for you all to use, especially in your position when trying to monitor testing. Yes.
So there's a question, and this is, if a student has a score from several years ago, can we rescreen, but only has a score, it's basically, you know, from several years ago. So Megan, that's the question for you.
Okay, so a student has, so for my understanding, I'm assuming the student has an access score that was taken in Utah several years ago and has nothing since then.
Yes.
So you don't rescreen. If the student is considered multilingual and still receiving services, then have them take the access test next go around. That's going to be the best thing. Because honestly, screening or not, they're in the system. You can't just exit them or move them without that access score. So there's nothing in the law that says you can't rescreen, but I don't think making a student screen is worth the time and burden on the test administrator or the student when the screener is not going to do anything anyways. It's only the access test that can determine exiting or not exiting, but redesignation to monitoring.
Thanks, Megan.
Yeah. All right, so exciting changes in AMS coming up. And then just looking ahead, we are going to be still offering lots of trainings. So we are going to have some trainings in the summer. The summer trainings are going to focus more on, of course, screener test administration. I am really hoping that I can do a combination of virtual and in person. So keep an eye out for those. My plan is to offer in person to accommodate people that are like, I need to be learning in person. And then those of you that are like, I can't travel, I prefer online. So we will do some virtual as well. We will, of course, come the winter, have the access administration trainings. But outside of that, we really would like to hear from you. What would you like to see, knowing that there are other trainings, standards, you know, domain specific trainings, PLC stuff, the language of math, the language of science. what are some requests that you would have for us as we are considering building this out? We are going to be making these decisions next month for what we are going to be offering next year, this summer and next year. So we want to hear from you. What are your needs? Because we don't know always.
So one suggestion that I have is, so there's one question from someone who says, is this for the new kindergarten screener? So she's talking about the training.
We will have both kinder screener and the regular online 1 through 12 screener trainings. Yes, we will have both.
Yeah, so this is, I think this is a really important one. It fits kind of with what we were talking about previously, is thinking about domain-specific trainings. And I think the reason that's really critical is this idea of, in the ESSA plan, what the question was asked of USBE was, how is the state agency going to ensure that students have access to grade level content? So if it's actual, grade level content, then, some of the things that we see doesn't really support academic conversations because vocabulary is not embedded in a context, not used in context, not to mention, this idea of discrete grammar teaching that has no relevance to anything for generally anybody, but specifically someone who's learning language through having conversations that include, really explicit prompts related to academic language in the content area. So I would suggest that the frame that the Department of Justice and Department of Education, based on civil rights obligations, and this is a big confusion with targeted school improvement, because the tendency is to think that the 500 schools in targeted school improvement for multilingual learners as a student group is all about Wida. No, it's not all about Wida. It's actually about academic. It's about academic content and access to career and college coursework and closing the opportunity gap. So you have to be really strategic in thinking about the kind of learning that you're going to, suggest that the assessment department provide, because WIDA does that for everybody in the consortium. That will really help your teachers and help you better understand what access to grade level content looks like. Because that's the point. It's not about the level of English proficiency. That does not get you into TSI.
Yeah.
And people are really confused about that.
Yeah, it really, Christelle, she nailed it. It really is about equitable access to content in those core subjects that we test in RISE and Utah Aspire Plus, right? And so, are students being equitably served and provided language services that allow them access to that content, right? And so, I'm kind of thinking based on this conversation, and if I see kind of a general thumbs up, what if as I do have a meeting next week with Wida about our opportunities for our professional learning and trainings next year, if I can get that menu and maybe just send out a survey to you all of what you all would prefer, what's going to be offered. Yeah, how do y'all feel? Thumbs up?
Yeah, I think that's really important, because the other thing is the lack of scaffolding that I've seen in content areas. I actually saw this, two amazing science classes where the scaffolding was incredible, and it was using the SEED kind of principles in relationship to how students learn science by inquiry, instead of teachers saying, read this page and then talking them to death, and then giving them step by step, and then, not in any way providing the kind of cognitive rigor that's embedded in actually doing something in science, right?
Yeah.
So, Megan, would you be able to put your email in the chat? Okay, so it's Megan Lopez, so it's just like mine.
Yeah, Megan.Lopez.
Yeah, at schools.utah.gov. And so when I send, she's already sent this out, but when she sends the survey out, she'll make sure, and she'll send it to me and I'll send it out too. So we'll do the Title I people, we'll do everybody and put a deadline on it. And you can actually connect with her at the USBE website in the assessment department. So
Yeah.
that'll be great.
Yeah. So I'll send it out to assessment directors as well, but
Yeah.
knowing that we will always do the assessment trainings. So,
Right.
all right. So that I've written down. If you can think of anything, and also if there's something that's not offered, that we don't have an option, but you're like, you know what, my LEA really has a need, please contact us. Like we love coming to your schools. We love doing trainings. You know, like it gives us a chance to work with you, and really personalize our trainings to meet your needs. Right. And that's what we're about. Christelle said it at the beginning. We're not compliance. We're not monitoring. Our job is support. And we want to make sure you have every bit of equitable access to everything you need to better serve your students.
So here's another question. What programs, and this is for everybody, are you all using in your districts to transfer and track these data to your district platforms so that this data are available for teachers and administration to access and view? So this is a really important question. When I meet with people and sometimes principals, they have no idea that you can go to the USBE data gateway, and you can actually download individual reports that are graphs in relationship to long-term Wida experiences for students. And I know that there are some schools that download those, use them in department meetings to help people better understand what annual growth goals could possibly be and what the assets are for each of the students, instead of always thinking, from the deficit perspective. So anybody who wants to jump in right now, because I know probably, so someone is saying, needing some clarification, next school year, we should be using a new model of the kindergarten screener. Is that correct? Megan, that's more of a concrete question.
No, we retired the KWAPT this year. We have officially moved over to the kindergarten screener. So if you are still using KWAPT, that no longer counts. You need to immediately switch over to the kindergarten screener. So we made that transition this year. So KWAPT retired, and actually any and all resources are being pulled from all of Wida's websites as well. So you should be using kindergarten screener. Hopefully that answers that question. To speak to the question about data platforms and everything, 100%, I'll put that plug in for the data gateway as well. Every single educator has access to that. The data follows the students, not the school, not the teacher. So any student that has any assessment data, right, it will be housed in the data gateway. And again, don't just take a look at the access report, take a look at it all, because it's going to tell a larger picture. We need to get the full narrative so we can really be informed to serve our students better. But additionally, we have the EL software grant. We do have a new person at USBE overseeing that. It used to be Melanie Durfee. She can still absolutely help you, but we now have Amber Wright. LEAs can choose if they want. You can have, I believe it's Lexia, Imagine Learning, and then Elevation. And you can use all of those different learning platforms. I can say, well, I'm not going to endorse any just one. I do know that Elevation does have a data platform that incorporates our accountability system.
Yeah, I think that's a really that's an important piece. And so when you go to the data gateway, you'll have to actually register. So you register, and then you'll have access to this wide range. And then you connect with the assessment directors as well as people in the LEA to see how the teaching and learning, digital teaching and learning initiative has supported the way in which you have access to a range of platforms that can be directly used with shaping instruction, because that's really that's the point.
Right.
And if you have further questions about that, you can always email me or Megan in relationship to some really exemplary practices that have already been established. I know that Annalise Ruiz and Anya for Alpine, they have a really fabulous system that's integrated into their informational systems already. And so that's the other thing. And if you want to have a conversation about all these different ways in which access to multiple data points makes a difference in instruction, you just let us know and we'll gather the people who are doing really interesting work. I've seen schools in Park City do amazing things, in Alpine, in Provo, in Ogden, at Wasatch, in Weber. Some of the best instruction I've ever seen in my life, in my long years, has been in Utah. And so we should actually take advantage of that and learn from each other as a learning community.
Yep, absolutely. And Christelle is a master at saying, oh, you want to see something, this school does it, let's make sure, let's arrange something, I'll be the middleman, let's get you all together. She is the master at that. I can try to emulate her, but she's the master. I will also say I've been surprised lately to hear how many LEAs have not really even known that they're eligible for the EL software grant. And that you really do just have that available, all of you, and you can choose it. It's a free resource.
Yeah, because I think that's the other issue, and the other issue is, really asking the students about their experiences of using software. When I do the assessment capable learner interviews and gather data for schools, when I do observations. And I've been doing observations with Deputy Superintendent Scott Jones, and when we interview students, they say usually the most honest and insightful things. If there's a software program that doesn't work for them, they know exactly why it doesn't work, and they'll say, that really sucks, and this is the reason, and they'll be really concrete about it. So if you're not getting student feedback, and you don't have a way in which program evaluation supports the way in which you spend funds to make a significant difference for students, then you should, and I can always help you with these conversations, or if you want to invite me and learn how to use the USBE observation tool that's really well scaffolded and shows what well scaffolded instruction looks like, as well as increased cognitive rigor, all you have to do is email me. And I've done lots of official monitoring classroom visits, but even if they're schools that just say, come and teach us how to use the tool, and can we adapt it to do this? Ogden uses the tool, a version of it. Park City uses a version of it. So this is a way to build the capacity to actually identify those promising practices of great instruction, so that teachers don't feel incompetent and insecure, right? That's really the point of building capacity for quality instruction.
Yep.
Megan, thank you. You've been really wonderful.
I'm gonna I have a
Oh, perfect. Yep.
my contact information. Two other things that I need to mention is I kind of skipped over this with our screening requirements. Please do note that we did need to send out a memo to all LEAs. This went a memo that went to all assessment directors just about per our state's ESSA plan and federal guidelines, what our screening requirements are. So just take note of that. If you have any questions about, is my school going through the screening process correctly? Or is my LEA going through this process correctly? Please just contact me. I'd be happy to walk you through and also troubleshoot any concerns or questions that you have in your processes for identifying students. And then the last thing that I'm going to say, which is assessment, but not necessarily WIDA related. We are in our summative assessment window right now. And one thing that I've been noticing as I've been out doing observations to just get a lay of the land and see where we're at now that I can go back into schools, which has been so refreshing, is that please make sure that you are being an advocate for your multilingual learner students in the summative assessment process. You should have language plans that your team is creating for all the students. Please make sure that the test administrators are aware of those plans and if students need accommodations for language services or not, right? So just so you know, we do have an accommodations manual that outlines everything available to our multilingual learners. If a student actually needs directions, not the test items, but the directions on how to just interact with the test, how to sit down on the platform with these tests, if it's RISE, UTAS Aspire Plus, whatever, and that student needs those directions translated, you need to provide that translation. And also, all of our summative assessments have paper options. If technology is not appropriate for that student to be engaging in with those summative assessments, and that's part of their language plan, please be an advocate and say this student should not be on the computer interacting with this test. They need the paper version. We have to translate the directions. So please make sure that as they are going through this summative process, that you're checking that these students have what they need. They should not be traumatized by taking summative assessments. It is their right to engage in those tests and to engage in an equitable manner. And we got to provide those accommodations. So please double check the plans and talk with your assessment directors, talk with your test administrators to ensure that they have equitable access and their needs are being met and accommodated as they engage in summative testing. So, and also I do believe that that's going to give you a better accurate representation of their access to content, which Christelle mentioned earlier, is what ultimately creates a TSI school or not.
Thanks, Megan. We really appreciate your efforts at being clear and really supporting and being open to any kinds of questions in relationship to the support that we can provide. So thanks again, Megan.
You are so welcome. I'm going to stay on as long as I can until my computer decides it's going to restart.
Okay, so that sounds good. So I'm going to share my screen. So we'll see if this works. So are you actually seeing this? Yes, okay. So Beverly, if you're on, could you monitor the chat? And Beverly is going to kind of be a co-presenter type person as well for questions, because both of us have spent 2 years working on this with Representative Johnson and Senator Thatcher. And so this is now law, and it's was House Bill 230 provisions. And so the information is from the actual legislative presentation that happened in committee. If you look at it, it's 3 basic things: newcomer, student, foreign exchange, student transcript repository, newcomer age documentation and recognition, and conditional enrollment extension. On our website, we also have civil rights with an FAQ about what parents should really know, and it's translated in every possible language. So this is now a law, and so just so we're clear about the purposes, so it really is a constitutional mandate that public schools are open to all children of the state, all children, including refugee students. The enrollment it goes back to this idea of the first meaningful interaction, and the way in which refugee families, are treated when they actually enroll their students into, kind of just an incredibly different experience in relationship to how you create the conditions. So this bill really ensures that this enrollment process is a welcoming law that supports the way in which we adjust systems so that equitable access is done appropriately for students who are refugees. So again, this goes back to what Bev said about age recognition, and a lot of it ends up being either based on the actual year. One legislator talked about the way in which age is determined in China, because the linguistic calendar translation errors, it could be lost in flight. Birth dates sometimes are focused on cultural significance. So all these things that we're talking about in relationship to creating a welcoming environment is about our abilities to support registration processes and front office staff in really better understanding what those conditions are. And I'm going to send this out to you. I'm not going to read all of it, but I'm just going to give you highlights and then we'll open to questions. The bill clarifies the use of age documentation for establishing guardianship. This is the other issue that I think is really important. And we're going to have a special session on issues related to trafficking. And that's a very challenging conversation in relationship to how students are trafficked. And then other clarifications for the child safety protection for students. And then here's an example of age documentation. And this comes right from what was presented at the legislation with the committees. So there are discrepancies, again, lost in flight, cultural significance. Birth dates do not mean day of birth. Oftentimes the January 1st is an assigned birth date. And you have the I-94 arrival documentation, but as we know, sometimes that is not, especially in the situation of Afghan refugees and Ukrainian refugees, and those who are in areas of conflict, civil war in African countries. The remedial procedures for incorrect documentation, paper procedure could be an affidavit, supporting document. It could be, it could include religious or hospital physician certificate. So do you see how much more extensive this is than just saying you can't register because you don't have an I-94? So that's why this is important, social services documentation. These are ways that can mitigate the incorrect documentation or the discrepancies in relationship to not enrolling students immediately in schools.
Can I jump in real quick? The other thing that it does is it's allowing us more flexibility in enrolling them in the correct placement from the get-go. So while a lot of us are enrolling, the inaccuracies are causing some pretty significant disruptions in placement. So
yeah, now I think this is a really critical thing too. And afterward, Bev is going to jump in with another example, but some of you can actually, like Victoria Soleil from Highland and other people, and I'll just go back to this thing about really respecting families and working with families directly instead of making judgments about motivations for families, which I don't really understand, how that can be different than working with just, families that somehow have, expertise in working the system. So when we have refugee families come, or immigrant families, or unaccompanied minors with guardianship, they don't have those experiences, right? So they don't know how to negotiate a system to advocate for their students because they don't actually know what that would mean. So this is another really amazing thing in the bill. It's this review team procedure, working with the enroller to determine, as Bev said, the student's biological age for the LEA use. So the review team in the law can have these people. You shouldn't be having, and I'm just going to say this, and it's not any aspersions on anybody, but you shouldn't be just saying the counselor makes all the decisions when the student goes to register. Okay, so, you know, you have to really think about creating a collaborative environment in which all these things are considered to ensure equitable access for students. I'll give you another concrete example. So there was a student, she was an asylee, and I worked with her last year. And she came in right before COVID, and her transcript from her country, it wasn't African, it was a South American country, was amazing. I mean, she had done so many amazing, such extraordinary coursework. I actually saw this, this week. There was a student that we were interviewing, Scott and I were interviewing. We asked her what her interests were, and she wants to be a petrochemical engineer. Now, she's only been in the country for 4 weeks. When we looked up her transcript and saw what she was programmed into, and then her transcript from her country, she had taken algebra, trigonometry, calculus. She had taken physical science, natural sciences, chemistry, physics, accounting, English humanities courses. So, and she was in like the lowest level of English proficiency. So you see the point? I mean, if you actually see the concrete examples from students and their actual experiences, and how this new bill is really focusing on this international transcript repository to really better support these decisions. You have a student, 2 Afghan students who attended the same primary school in Kabul, but they're enrolled in different schools in different districts. So this repository allows districts to build off of each other's experience, and decreasing all the administrative burdens and increasing the students' likelihood of equitable access and success by improving their grade and credit placement with a repository that will be integrated into the USIMS system at USBE. So the reason this is important, the student that I met yesterday that has all these advanced coursework, do you know what her GPA is in the courses she has here? 3.7. She has all A's. And in secondary math, she has a B plus and an A in the first quarter. So thinking about the way in which diverse students with amazing educational experiences previously can be honored is really important. So this is just a visual kind of representation of a newcomer transcript repository in USIMS, and then the girls in school in Kabul, or it might be in Kiev or in the Ukraine or in Somalia. And it's really about placement for newcomer students in a way that we better understand the assets they actually bring to our schools. This is not deficit, So sometimes, and I hear all kinds of things, and it's not about judgment, it's about really being more knowledgeable, right? So if someone is looking at a transcript and they don't know how to evaluate the transcript, we already have resources on Title III in every single country that will help you better understand the way in which students have acquired knowledge and understanding, even though, and in their home language, right? So conceptually, they understand sometimes even better than our own students what those courses are like in the content. So this is conditional enrollment, allows student that has not received complete immunization records for 21 days. And this goes with military families as well. To be conditionally enrolled, students must have received at least one dose. Now, when refugees when health screen happens, like for example, let's take an example of Ukrainian families. Well, not families, just the mothers and the children, because the Ukrainian men are fighting, right? So when they come to Poland and they're at IRC, there's this initial health screening that happens. It happened with the refugees from Kabul when they came from Afghanistan as evacuees. And so they get their initial required vaccinations, right? They already have been screened health-wise. So this idea of not having the full records for refugee students, doesn't focus on what really happens for refugee students. So the mandatory medical examination that happens before the students even come, before the refugee students even get here. And then if I put these in here, so you could see the initial medical examination and then waivers for vaccinations that the panel, so medical doctors, determine if it's appropriate or not, or contrary to specific religious beliefs related to legislation from the United States Attorney General. So these are things, and it's a very, I've kind of simplified it so that it's more understandable. And if you want more detail and ideas on how we can help registrars in schools and, families that come to our schools to enroll, how they're welcomed, would be really important. I'll give you one concrete example. So remember this bill, and I'll actually send you the text of both of the bills. The next one is about family engagement and language services, which we'll have a special session on. That HB 230 provisions is newcomer student and foreign exchange student transcript repository. We can't say things like, well, we're going to put this student in these courses because, we don't know how to translate their transcripts from other countries, because we already have those supports. And so if you have those questions, you should email me, as well as a brand new repository that will help us better assess the way in which students should be enrolled into, the appropriate environment for their advanced learning. And then the newcomer age and documentation to mitigate those, missed documents, and related to conditional enrollment, which is an extension based on the actual experiences of the students who are either evacuees or asylees or unaccompanied minors. And many people don't understand that when we have unaccompanied minors, there is a process that we use to ensure that the guardian or the relative, is the one who's connected. And so that's why the actual bill, when I send it to you and you look at it and you have any questions, then we'll have another session with International Rescue Committee and also Catholic Community Services, who work with unaccompanied minors, and we have specialists who do that. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we're going to open to questions, as well as anything that that Bev wants to share. So we're open to questions, and I know there's a shakeout drill that's happening or has happened. So what questions do you have about anything, or stories, experiences that you want to share that has really helped you better understand the situation of refugees or newcomers related to the work that you're doing? Anyone?
I can share the story that this was a pretty timely experience on. I was with Yassine and Stephanie and Olivia from IRC and getting for the bill signing on Thursday night, and Friday I have a phone call. We have a new student enrolling from Afghanistan there with the uncle, and my person that was onboarding said there is no way this student is 8 years old, facial hair, all kinds of things. Well, he was just supposed to be helping his uncle get to the airport. All he was supposed to be doing was helping uncle get his stuff to the airport in Kabul. Got to the front of the line. People are fighting and pushing and shoving. It was so chaotic. He gets rushed through with the uncle and just gets on the plane. And when he went through, they said, "What's your birth date?" And it was very loud and noisy. And someone said 12 or 13. So they put 1/1 of 2013, which makes him 8, but he's actually turning 13. And so the I-94 was incorrect, but we've had the situation in the past and we don't have anything else to go on. And that's what we had to use as documentation. And I was able to stop. We enrolled him in middle school. We were waiting. We will be able to get the card from family members back in Kabul, but of course it's going to take a little bit, but this allowed us to, and both the boy and his uncle, who is now getting custody of him, it was just so, they were so grateful to be heard and understood. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, so if there's anyone else who either has a question or
Christelle, this isn't a question, Christelle, but just wanted to say thank you to Beverly and you for doing this work. Coming from a district that receives hundreds of newcomers and refugees in a year's time, this is fantastic and will help us move forward in many different ways. So thank you.
Yeah, David, thank you. I think the fact that we've been working on this for 2 years and that we actually have these really interesting legislators who are our allies, and that's what we have to focus on. We have to focus on the way in which we're strategic, and we can't say that we value family and that we welcome refugees if our systems don't really represent that, right? So David, it's such a privilege to work with you and Tumaini Center and Bev. The refugee agencies just rave about the work that you're doing.
Well, and Christelle, just to talk a little bit about that, the Tumaini Center is a great start, fantastic approach. However, we're looking at now going the next step, which is now building capacity in our neighborhood schools, which is what you just talked about. And that's what we need to do. And so we're looking at doing, for lack of a better word, we're Tumaini on the go for this next year, which is actually going to entail what we're trying to look at is refugee life coaches, basically, that will actually go into the neighborhood schools, work with building capacity within the school instead of necessarily having it be its own entity. And so you mentioned that it's all about building capacity in schools, and that's hopefully what we're going to be working towards this next year. And so when that gets up and going, we'll share that with you, Christelle, and have you come and visit.
Yeah, that's wonderful. The other thing is, we actually we have our challenges, right? But we should actually be incredibly proud of the kind of commitment we see with educators, district people, state legislators who are willing to actually put the time in and the effort in relationship to creating that environment that focuses on really the economic well-being of all the families in Utah, not just a specific group of families and parents. So if we value parents, that means that when we communicate with them, they actually have a meaningful experience with every single person in every single school. And that's kind of our goal. And the Tumaini on the go is really a cool phrase. I love it. So any other comments? So Park City, they actually have and this goes back to David's idea as well as Bev's, in relationship to authentic partnerships. The Dream Big program, which is a summer school at Park City, is a collaboration with USU. Is that right? Yes, USU. And so, their ACT scores for students in the Summer Bridge program and the equitable, well prepared. They don't have separate ACT classes. They don't have that. They actually have really personalized content link courses in a cohort. and I visited that. And if you guys want to come with me and see what they're doing to actually do personalized instruction so that students learning English are never behind in their courses. I saw this amazing course in science where they were doing an experiment in groundwater, which was incredible. And another one that was about water density. If we all wanted to get together and think about how that hands-on experience of science creates educational opportunities and career opportunities for our students speaking another language, then we should do that. I mean, I'm open to any kind of innovative strategies that we can share with people. This is not about competition, between high schools or between, districts. This is about us as a huge learning community. So I just want to thank you for what a privilege it is to be of service to you. And you just invite me anytime. And, I'd rather be in schools and talking with students, because that's where you find the truth of things when you ask students. So any other last comments before I sign off? Because this has been very heartwarming and open, and don't give up. Just be courageous and be advocates. So I've been doing this for a while. And we have people saying they would visit Park City, so you guys email me and let me know. They also have equitable access. There's no testing for gifted and talented programs at all. If you actually pull up your data around who's in gifted and talented programs in your schools, you'll find out that there's a serious problem because of the kind of assessments that are used end up eliminating, a wide range of diverse perspectives and diverse languages. And all the research shows that innovation only happens when you have diverse perspectives, so that you don't keep repeating the same thing over and over again. So those are my final words, and I just want to thank you again for the privilege of being a colleague and a learner from you and with you. So thanks so much, everybody.
Estelle,
Yes.
I just want to say thank you as well. I always benefit from these meetings. Being a new LEA, I always get wonderful ideas from everybody. And this is one of the meetings that I always tend to get connections with people. And it's one of the ways that I'm able to make connections and get a lot of my questions answered. Half the time I'm always writing notes and tend to review the recordings. And but anyhow, just wanted to say thank you for everything that you provide us with. And thank you for everybody, to everybody and all the things that you guys always provide for everybody that's new. So thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. The goal is to learn with each other and from each other, and that includes students. So thank you. I'll stay on just for a minute, but the meeting is officially ended. But if you want to chat with me personally, I'll be on for a bit.
Christella, would you like me to stay on, or am I officially excused?
You're officially excused, Megan. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Have a great rest of your day, all.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh, Christelle, I'd always want to stay on and chat, but I feel like we've done some chatting, and I'm going to go back to bed, I think.
Yeah, you should. And you let me know. Let me know if you need some magic Christelle love to help you recover. Okay.
I will. Thanks.
Thanks, Deb. Okay. Bye-bye. Hi, Brooke.
How are you?
I'm good. Hi, Connie. I hope you're taking care of yourself. I keep track of Davis quite a bit, and if you need me, you can call on me. Same thing with you, Brooke and Granite, and
Great. We always need you.
Thank you, Christelle. I appreciate all of your resources and your support. We will definitely reach out to you.
Okay, you take care, Connie.
You
And
too.
Brooke,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Yeah, the part we missed was the new law. So we will have to read the transcript and get beefed up on that. And if we have questions, we'll for sure reach out.
Yeah, and I'll send you out the actual the law because the law is really important, but then the way in which I organized it based on the presentation that was done to the state legislators.
Okay.
You all should know those state legislators, and anything that we have an issue, we can work through IRC with Dan Johnson, who's amazing, and Thatcher. And once we get a bill passed and it becomes signed into law, then it really creates these different opportunities for the work that we do, right? So,
Fantastic. Yeah. Yeah, I was under my desk. I think I was one of the few people that actually climbed under my desk here at the office. And then we were outside for a little bit. So anyway.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, have a great day. Thank you.
Let's keep in touch.
All right. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye. Victoria, I actually have the contract, so I'll just let you know, okay? Anyone else before I close the room? Okay, Alex, will you let me know when the recording is available so I can send it out to everybody? Alex? You're welcome, Carly. Thank you. So, Victoria, did you hear that I actually have the contract for services provided? And we can talk about that later. Okay, thanks everybody. I'm signing off. You all take care, and thank you for joining us.